I think we're live. TikTok, time to rock. Here with What Do You Meme, John McCrae, and Dr. Mike Licona. Hopefully you know these guys by now. If not, you haven't been following my stuff very long. But we're down here recording what could be the most epic series on the resurrection in all of history. So far, we've recorded William Lane Craig and Mike Licona. Next, which will be a couple weeks from now, we're going to record Gary Habermas and Michael Brown, and we're going to see what happens. But the plan now is to have a 24 video series on my channel, going through different areas, and then John's planning on making something for his channel. So should be pretty dope. Yeah. Yeah. Nate 2D2 is already asking, "Where's Licona's yellow shirt?"
See, I knew it.
Where is your yellow shirt, Mike?
Well, Debbie has one. Debbie has a yellow shirt.
Your wife has one? Put on her yellow shirt?
I was just thinking, with the yellow shirts you guys have on, do they make them for men?
All right. Well, let's see. Loris K, Psalms 25. Welcome to Boom Squad Advance. Hey,
nice.
Christian Waugh says, "Hello, Hater Wood." Why do people call me Hater Wood? All I do is help and encourage people. Tatiana J said, "I love Michael Brown." Yeah, that's kind of cool. See, my normal inclination when talking about the resurrection is just to focus on the historical evidence. But I was really thinking, I'd kind of like to do one series that kind of addresses all the connected issues. So not just the historical evidence for Jesus' death, but defending the idea that Jesus' death was an atonement for us. And so I had Dr. Craig talking on that. But also with Michael Brown, I wanted him to talk about Old Testament prophecies about the death and resurrection of the Messiah. So yeah, trying to get all the main issues into one, and that would kind of just leave a series on the deity of Christ as something to work on maybe later this year. And then you've got then I would have all the basics of the gospel there. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, the plan here is just for us to take questions from the chat for a little while, or comments, anything you guys want to talk about. We had to, gosh, what time did we wake up?
Well, we were out of here at 7:45, right, this morning.
We had to leave. We had to leave at 7:45 to get to the church to set up and stuff, and then we took us a while to get everything set up, and then recorded a bunch of clips of Mike and stuff like that. And so, yep, pretty beat. So we're just gonna chill here with you guys.
Yeah.
See how things are going. Punch Bowl Haircut said, "Hey David, what's it like being able to defeat any argument with one punch?"
He wouldn't know.
It's pretty cool. You know what they're talking about?
No.
You're like 1,000 years old. You don't know. There's a character that's my little this little guy. What is this called? Is this called an avatar? What's that called?
Yeah, something
Is that
like
what it's called?
Yeah.
That's a character named Saitama, whose power is he can destroy any enemy with one punch. And so my son Luke one day was saying, "Hey, you want to watch a show with me? It's about a guy who can destroy any enemy with one punch." And I was going, "That's going to be boring, right? It's going to be boring." But that's kind of the point of it. The show starts out with him walking around going, "I have no feeling anymore because I can't find an enemy that can face me," and stuff like that. Anyway, pretty hilarious show. But I like that idea of being able to destroy any opponent with one punch. So kind of rolled with that.
All right.
Got some?
There's one question. It's from Adam Snow. It says, "Why doesn't the Holy Spirit know the hour if he is God?" Matthew 24:35 says only the Father knows.
Now, careful because Adam Snow is a professional troll here.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So, Adam, we're going to go ahead and answer a question, and then just to make sure you're not trolling, you're going to have to answer some questions of ours. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. Now, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the Spirit know the thoughts of God?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that correct?
Yeah, but it's Jesus.
No. He's asking about the Spirit. He's asking about the Spirit.
Yeah. So how do we know the Holy Spirit doesn't know?
Well, he's saying because it says only
Yeah.
the Father. So Adam isn't apparently thinking that the Holy Spirit's in a different category when he says no one knows, and he's talking about all human beings, and then not the angels and then nor the Son in that physical form, but only the Father. But you also have that the Holy Spirit knows the thoughts of God. So he's clearly not talking about the Holy Spirit there. Would that be?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Adam Snow, now we've answered one of your questions. And so, to be fair, you should answer one of ours. Why does your God, Allah, command us to judge by the gospel? In Surah 5, verse 47 of the Quran, he commands Christians to judge by the gospel. This is in the 7th century. So this is the gospel that has been preserved from the 1st century down to the 7th century. We know what the gospel that Christians had during this time was. They treated the 4 gospels as a unit called the fourfold gospel. Just like in the Bible, if you refer to the gospel as a message, that could be a spoken message. But when you refer to it as a book, from the 2nd century onward, they refer to the 4 gospels as, if you're talking about a text, they refer to it as the gospel or the fourfold gospel. In Surah 5, verse 47 of the Quran, Allah commands the followers of the gospel, the people of the gospel, to judge by what he has revealed in the gospel. Why does he command us to do that when the gospel completely contradicts the Quran on basic doctrines like Jesus' death and resurrection?
And we will be awaiting that response, Adam Snow. So I'm keeping an eye on it. So go ahead and let us know down below. Yo.
Here's a question from Renee. I have a question for Dr. Licona. Why do you think some manuscripts don't contain John 8, the woman caught in adultery, and some don't? Or some do and some don't?
Well, I guess the real question would be is why do some contain it? Most New Testament scholars, looking at the data, looking at the manuscripts, don't think that the pericope of the woman caught in adultery was part of what John originally wrote. In fact, I have a friend, John David Punch. He's a pastor right now up in Michigan, and Holland, Michigan, and he did his doctoral dissertation. He is conservative, and he went into it trying to prove that the pericope of the woman caught in adultery was part of the original Gospel of John. And as much as he wanted to have that conclusion, he concluded that it was inconclusive. So he still has a little more conservative view than most scholars do on it. And admittedly, he studied this a lot more than most scholars have as well. But he says, in his opinion, it's inconclusive. So how it got in there, we don't know. It could be an authentic story about Jesus, just not in the first Gospel of John. It's also, I would think, possible that it could be part of a second edition of John's Gospel, you know?
Yep. So notice, even according to John, Jesus did far more things than were included in his original gospel. So the claim, as far as I know, as you point out, could be a true story. The claim is not, hey, this is a false story that someone made up. The claim is, this doesn't look like it was originally here in the Gospel of John. And so
that's right. I think ultimately, in terms of whether it's authentic, just has to remain in question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, but that just calls into question whether that was part of the original Gospel of John.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't call into question the rest of John, of course.
Mm-hmm. And really doesn't tremendously call into question the story. If it wasn't part of the original, then we'd have to wonder about authorship and so on. But I mean, to say that it was not originally part of the Gospel of John does not mean that the story was made up. But yeah, we have to be careful. We have to be careful about using it to prove. But here's what's interesting.
That's a good question she's asking too.
Yeah. Here's what's interesting, because that story is we would use that story to say, hey, you know, don't execute someone for adultery, right? And that the New Testament is giving its thumb down to executing someone for adultery. But it's kind of interesting. You have the same thing in the story of Joseph and Mary, where it says, and Joseph, being a righteous man, did not want to expose her to public disgrace.
Yeah.
And so he resolved to kind of hush up the matter. And so that's just interesting, saying he's a righteous man, so he doesn't want to have this teenage girl executed when he thinks she got pregnant out of, through adultery or something like that. So you kind of have the same idea of, hey, don't carry out that legal punishment there. So anyway, interesting stuff. But anyway, similar idea to to what we find in John, some manuscripts.
Cool.
Liger system and the super sticker. Is that because your favorite animal is a liger? You guys know what a liger is?
Tiger, lion, tiger.
Yeah, you mix them together.
Yeah.
He loves all these weird animals.
It's because my little boy loves animals, so we watch animals every night. We actually just watched some of the ligers the other night, like last week. It was dope.
I think that's Napoleon Dynamite's favorite animal. He said a liger is his favorite animal.
Yeah.
And thanks to Illiventure.
Welcome to the Boom Squad.
Welcome to the Boom Squad. The Boom Squad. The Boom Squad. Hey, the Boom Squad. A couple of people are saying my time here conflicts with conflicts with Christian princes. Yeah, we probably should coordinate so we're not overlapping because we have a lot of the same people who watch us. Austin Williams said, "God is dead. There is only nations." What the heck are you talking about, dude?
There's only nations. I have no idea what that means. Yeah, so you guys throw in your questions now because we're going to take, whichever ones you guys got here that we see that look interesting.
I got one from Mike here.
Cool.
Chris Klaus said, question for Mike Licona. Do you believe the Gospels are divinely inspired even though you view them as Greco-Roman biography?
Well, yeah, I do, of course.
Proclaim your heresies. Acknowledge your heresies. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do believe they're divinely inspired. The fact that if they belong to the genre of Greco-Roman biography has nothing to say one way or the other whether they're divinely inspired. Proverbs was a common genre. In fact, the book of Proverbs takes a number of its proverbs from Egyptian proverbs. It's still divinely inspired, I believe. So the fact that it's Greco-Roman biography should not at all do anything to call into question whether it's divinely inspired.
And the idea is if God were going to inspire a text and people are going to be moved by the Spirit, but they're still sitting down to write text, they're going to use the genre of the time, right?
Of course. I mean, that's what we find. Acts is historiography. It's a history. Paul used letters. If you were going to communicate to another individual and write and make certain requests or answer certain questions, what genre would you use? You'd use a letter, an epistle. So if you're going to write a history of the first 3 decades of the church, or about a war or whatever, you're going to do history. Mm-hmm. Psalms are songs. So if you want to write lyrics to songs, what are you going to do? You're going to use this genre of songs. If you are desiring to write a book about the life of an individual, what genre are you going to use? Biography. Seems like a no-brainer, right? Mm-hmm. So God, in whatever the divine inspiration process looked like, and I do believe the Gospels are divinely inspired. I believe the whole Bible is divinely inspired, but God uses humans to do it, and he uses various genres to do it. And I think it's just naive to say that the Gospels are of a unique genre, something that most scholars, it came up, skeptical scholars started that over 100 years ago. Before that, most scholars believed that the Gospels were ancient biographies. And then skeptics said, no, they're a sui generis, a unique genre all of their own. But why? Why would you say that just of the Gospels, but not while recognizing the genre of every other type of literature we've got in the Bible, and then just say, well, the Gospels are different in that way? No, they're biographies. Now, you might dispute whether they're Greco-Roman biographies, but Jewish biographies, we really don't have too many examples of them from the period. You've got Philo's Life of Moses, which is, most agree, it is a biography, but it's kind of a commentary on the life of Moses as presented in Scripture, And then you've got Josephus's autobiography. That's it when it comes to Jewish biographies of that period. Everything else is the Greco-Roman. But even the Jewish biographies have a number of the literary devices that we find in Greco-Roman biography. So, I mean, and it is disputed, like with Luke, someone like Ben Witherington, an evangelical New Testament scholar, thinks that Luke is history. It's historiography. I don't agree with that. I do think it's biography. And we could talk about that if you want, but you can dispute some things like that, but there is certainly a biographical nature of these because they talk about the life of an individual. What other kind of genre would it be?
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Shout out to Corrance Chandler.
Welcome to the Boom Squad, son.
Boom Squad. The Boom Squad. The Boom Squad. Hey, the Boom Squad. I just invented that song.
All right. So why don't you guys tell me, what is the Boom Squad?
What?
What is the Boom Squad?
You're not down with the Boom Squad, man?
I don't know, man.
Oh, now, YouTube channels can have channel members, and these are people who like join your channel to support and stuff like that. We already had Patreon accounts and stuff like that, so people could support us there. But there's something that came up as a bit of a concern. YouTube had banned certain people while acknowledging that the people hadn't violated any rules, right? They said Tommy Robinson hadn't violated any rules, but we're closing off access to his accounts. And then they gave me a hate speech strike just for mentioning Tommy Robinson. So that's scary to me, right? I was basically saying they shouldn't have arrested this guy for reporting a story, right? So the idea that they could just start shutting people down, and then the channels are doing stuff like this. Then YouTube a few months ago came out with its new terms of service, and they say in the terms of service we reserve
as of January 1st.
I think it was before that.
Okay.
It might have went into effect then. But they posted it a little earlier. But they posted their new terms of service, and so and in the new terms of service, and this is what was creeping everyone out. It says we reserve the right to terminate any non-profitable account at any time. And so they're saying, hey, any account that is not making money for us, we reserve the right to terminate it. And we're thinking, why in the name of common sense? I mean, they're not making money from most accounts. Why would they put that in there? And the only thing anyone has been able to come up with is they're basically coming up with a justification for banning more channels, right? For just saying, hey, we're banning you, and then because they're officially supposed to be a platform, they're not supposed to be a publisher. So they're supposed to be relatively content and politically neutral. They're clearly not. And so, but they still want to keep banning certain content. And so how are they going to justify that? Well, it seems like they're trying to put another justification in there to just say, we said in our terms of service we can ban you at any time. So you have no legal grounds to complain. So anyway, long story short, we couldn't come up with any reason for them posting that other than that they were looking for another justification for banning people without getting sued over it. And so the solution to that was making sure our channels are profitable. And so instead of just Patreon, we have channel members and stuff like that. And so so now they can't use that. Our channels are making money because they take a cut of the stuff here. So anyway, that's just a theory, but
cool.
Yeah.
And you guys named it the Boom Squad?
I named mine the Boom Squad. Well, actually, who named that? I think it was
Meme Team?
Meme Team.
Yeah, he's got the Meme Team, his rhymes. I think Vocab told me to do Boom Squad.
Yeah, I did.
All right, here's a good one for Mike Licona. For people who are here first time, we may not have given a proper introduction here. So Mike, as you're answering this, why don't you tell everyone your background here?
Yep.
Just your scholarly background.
Oh, well, I have a PhD in New Testament Studies from the University of Pretoria, which I earned with distinction. I published my dissertation with IVP Academic. I have since published another academic volume, Why Are There Differences in the Gospels? What We Can Learn from Ancient Biography, that was published by Oxford University Press in 2017. Between those two books, I've also published a number of academic journal articles in peer-reviewed journals. So, but as a result of the two academic books, the one with IVP and the one with Oxford, I was nominated and was voted for membership into the Society of New Testament Studies. I mean, it's actually called Studiorum Novi Testamenti Societas. It's the most elite organization in the world to which New Testament scholars can belong, and you can't apply for it. You have to be nominated by two people, voted with unanimous acceptance. There's about 800 members in it, so it's a great honor to be part of that. I'm an associate professor of theology at Houston Baptist University, And so that's a little about my academic credentials.
All right. And before we go on, just John, tell us about what you do.
Yeah,
and then
so
Mike's going to get to the still question.
I got my PhD in memes.
Memeology.
I said I'm going to be a memeologist. So I run the channel called Whaddo You Meme, if you don't know. So basically, I respond to anti-Christian slogans, breezy slogans, memes, and videos. And I also do a lot of commentary on culture issues and light of the gospel and what we can learn from it. So that's it.
All right. So, Mike, back to you. This question was for you. How do you guys respond to the claim that I've heard that Jesus is a copy of the Egyptian god of the dead, Osiris? So,
yeah,
he's heard this.
Yeah.
You've heard that too, right?
Oh, yeah.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
The question is this a good argument? And notice, ladies and gentlemen, this is something, I made a video called Islam's 99-1 rule, right? And this is focusing on how Islam uses this kind of rule where and you can see the 99-1 rule being used in the video I just posted with William Lane Craig, where he reacts to some video clips by a Muslim apologist who is saying just absolute nonsense, but the audience doesn't know. So the general rule is if you have 100 people in your audience and 99 of them are going to mindlessly accept what you say without looking it up, and only one of them is actually going to bother to look it up and check it out, well, the 99 can shout down and silence the one. So Islam has sort of thrived and spread using that method. But I acknowledge in there that other people can use this too. And so what happens is, how many people study Egyptian mythology? Well, not a lot, right? How many study the historical Jesus? Not a lot, right? So what happens is this allows people to go around and sort of say anything they want. And they'll go, Osiris, just like Jesus. Therefore, the early Christians, they copied this story. And if people don't know about the historical Jesus and don't know about any Egyptian mythology, what are they going to answer? And so, fortunately, we have people who do study this stuff. What do you think, Mike?
Well, the story is that Osiris is, he and his brother just don't get along. And so his brother gets real angry with him and kills him. And just to prevent him from coming back to life, he chops him up into 14 pieces and scatters those pieces throughout Egypt. Well, Osiris's wife, Isis, who also happens to be his sister, must have been from West Virginia.
What the heck? A completely random attack. I pointed out, all I do is encourage other Christians, and they attack me. Anyway,
so
everyone gang up on the cool guy.
Isis, who is Osiris's wife and a sister, she goes and she starts going throughout Egypt to find these pieces, and she's able to find 13 of the 14 pieces. You may want to guess what piece she did not find.
Was it the no-no spot?
So she finds 13 of the 14 pieces. She brings him back to life in the netherworld, the underworld, where the dead are. So Osiris becomes god of the underworld. But here he is. It's not that you're resurrected life, immortality, where you come back to life and come back and see things on earth and then ascend to heaven where you're God. No, you maintain a shadowy existence as you don't even have all your parts, and a shadowy existence of God of the dead. It's more of a zombification than it is a resurrection. So it is quite different than what we have for the resurrection of Jesus. Even what we have today is a number of people, specialist scholars who specialize in this. They will even say that the Christians did not borrow from this. And you're bound to find parallels in just about anything anyway. Yeah. You know, we're all aware of a plane that took off from, well, many of us are aware of a plane that took off from Massachusetts one morning, and after 10 o'clock, it flew into one of the tallest skyscrapers in the world in New York City between the 78th and 80th floors, killing everybody on board. Well, I'm referring to the B-25 that flew into the Empire State Building on July 28, 1945. It actually happened. There are photographs of the aftermath. You can look them up. It's the same exact floors that the 767 flew into the South Tower on 9/11. So someone could say, well, look at, I mean, these is just, it's too much of a coincidence here. And besides, 9/11 was just It was 1,000 years from now, they say 9/11 was just made up. It was myth. Well, how do you know that? Well, look at all the clues involved. When you have an emergency, who do you call? 911. What was the emergency? Well, the U.S. was going through its greatest economic recession in its history at that point. And so that was symbolized by the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings. Well, what about the plane that flew into the Pentagon? Well, that just was symbolic of the declining U.S. influence around the world. Well, what about the plane that crashed into Pennsylvania farm field? Well, that just shows that all of this impacted the average American. You can come up with modern mythologizing all the time. You can find parallel details in just about anything. So you've got to show that there's a causal connection between these. And causal connection, unless you can do that.
Yeah, as far as we can tell, the early Jewish believers of Jesus had nothing but contempt for pagan mythology, right? So
I mean, look,
it just makes no sense that, and I mean, gosh, these guys are going to their horrible bloody deaths. If it's, hey, we really like that story of Osiris getting dismembered and then being almost completely put back together. Let's make up a story about Jesus rising from the dead, and being the Lord of life and the Messiah.
Yeah.
And
so, these parallels too, the parallels that he's talking about, they're just like, they're completely like spurious. They're not like really good parallels. You know, it's just kind of like the resurrection parallel he just said, right? And even with Mithra springs the life from a rock, and people call that like a resurrection story or whatnot too. But it's completely out of date with scholarship too. They say like in the last like 100 years, everybody said like, no, this is, you know, these parallels aren't really actual parallels. So you can read actually online the Egyptian Book of the Dead. You can read it online, and you can read like the story of Osiris and stuff like this to check out these parallels and see if how big of parallels you think they are. So.
You know, there's a guy, a Swedish scholar, his name's T.N.D. Medinger, and he wrote a book, I think it was 2003.
That's one on dying rising gods. Right?
Yeah, The Riddle of Resurrection, it's titled. And it's probably the most, as far as I know, the most recent monograph on this. Now, Medinger, in his introduction, or his abstract, he says that it's pretty much the consensus of scholarship. It is the consensus of scholarship today that the Christians did not borrow from pagan myths of dying and rising gods. And he says, it's also the consensus of scholarship today that there are no parallels within the ancient Near Eastern religions of dying and rising gods that predate Jesus. Now, Medinger, in spite of saying this is what the consensus says, he takes issue with it. And he says that he thinks there are 3 exceptions, maybe as many as 5. He's a very careful scholar, and he doesn't go beyond, you know, what he thinks the evidence can bear. But he does say, and you look at it, he comes at the end, he does say that he could be wrong on these. And in the end, he says, no, the Christians could not have borrowed from this because these are tied to the agricultural cycles. Jesus' resurrection is not. All these others talk about fictional characters in the gray, unnamed, distant past, whereas the resurrection of Jesus happens within the lifetime of people who are going around claiming that he rose from the dead. So he says the riddle remains.
Yep, hope that answers your question, Pitar. Shout out to Lion of Olympus in the super chat, says just supporting the channel. Over here, looking on John's computer, Abu Bakr, this name cracks me up no matter. Abu Bakr Al Puff Daddy. I've laughed at that like 10 different times on the channel. You get it?
No.
There's Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who was the leader of ISIS, and so his name is Abu Bakr al-Puff Daddy. Puff Daddy is a rapper. So Abu Bakr al-Puff Daddy says, David, Christian Prince did a remarkable defense against Fareed, who critiqued your video 5 disgusting things about Muhammad. Will you yourself respond to Fareed? I haven't looked at Fareed's response yet, but just the fact that he is actually responding and trying to interact with some of the information that people find horribly disturbing means I will almost certainly check out his video and respond. Actually, I mean, if he's responding to things like Muhammad being covered in semen, you know about this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if he's responding to things like Muhammad being covered in semen and Muhammad sucking on, a little boy's tongue and
That was his nephew, apparently, according to my Muslim friend.
Yeah, I know that. It's top 5 most disgusting facts about Muhammad. Sucking on your nephews.
That makes it better, though, right?
Wait, no, that's his grandson.
Was it his grandson?
Wait, my brain is really, really fried today.
I think it was his nephew, if I remember right.
No, this is grandson.
Who he loved very much. That's what one of my Muslim friends said. Oh well, no matter.
What are you talking about? Hang on.
You're old.
No. I really am having trouble thinking here.
I know. That's happens when you get old.
No, that's his grandson. I think that's his grandson in that thing. Yeah, but no. That's the point. The point is,
well, this guy. My friend said, well, David didn't mention that it was his grandson who he loved very much. That's what he said. He said, oh, that makes it better, right? It makes it more weird almost. Because then it's incestual.
Yeah, it's not even that it's sexual. It's that it's disgusting, right?
Incestual.
Yeah, the point is it's disgusting, right? Here's a guy who's covered in semen who would have sex with all 9 of his wives in one night and take one bath and things like this. He's doing all this stuff. He's climbing on top of all these different girls. He's having sex with his slave girls. Who knows what kind of diseases he had. And then hey, come here, little boy, let me suck on your tongue.
Maybe that story.
That's disgusting. That's just disgusting.
Maybe that story was told tongue in cheek.
This is what we have to do. This is what we have to deal with Mike. All right. So yes, I'd like to. Matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you what. One of the things that bothers me over the years is that so few Muslim apologists generally want to stay on the offensive and not actually deal with these issues. If Fareed's actually willing to discuss them, I will probably invite him on live to actually discuss this. We'll pull up the sources and he can give us his interpretation, and I'd be fine with that, right?
Yep.
That'd be dope.
John Buckley said, David, what's your opinion of chick tracks? You guys know about these chick tracks?
Oh yeah, long time ago. Are they still around?
I don't know. I think Jack Chick died. But I'm guessing they're still around. You know Chick Tracks?
No, I have no idea what that is.
There were these little comic books. Some of them were like some of the most amazing artwork ever. Some of them are just, cheesy little, cartoon comics and stuff like that. But they were tracks. There were these little comic books. And some of them you're like, gosh, what amazing artwork and stuff in here. The opinion on the Chick Tracks is I thought some of them were awesome, and I thought others were really, cheesy garbage. So that was my thoughts on that. Matter of fact, I was in prison when I got a copy of Allah Has No Son, which that track ends with a picture of Muhammad burning in hell and bowing down and saying Jesus is Lord. And I was like, whoa, this guy put this in a little comic? In fact, when some... It's kind of a long story, but I was locked up. I was at Stanton Correctional Center, and some Muslims went and complained to the administration about me that I was hurting their feelings on Islam. So the fact that these were like younger Muslims, and guess what? You don't go complain to the administration. Those of you who know how prison works, you don't go and complain to the administration. That makes you a snitch, right? And what was funny was even the older Muslims, the older convict Muslims, they agreed with me. They're like, "You're darn right. You shouldn't be complaining to the administration. Yeah, if you want to beat his face in or something like that, that's fine. But you don't go complaining." So anyway, I told them, I called them out for being snitches and stuff. But I had a chick track, and I was, and the imam there, who was a young guy, I said, I told one of my friends who was in his dorm, I said, go give this to him and tell him it's from David Wood. I wasn't going to hand these out, but since you guys are messing around now, I'm gonna have to do it. What's funny is that's kind of how I've been ever since. It's just, guys, hey, you want to be nice? I'm happy to be nice. If you're going to send me death threats and threaten to rape my wife, don't expect me to be nice about your prophet who encourages you to act like this. And then they send me death threats and say they're going to kill me and kill my family and rape my wife and kill my kids and all this nasty stuff. And then so I said, okay, well, I'm not going to be nice about your prophet. And they go, oh, we can't believe you're being so mean to our prophet when all we do is gently encourage you to believe in Islam. Wow. No, notice that's like my first impression of Islam was that these guys are going around harassing people. And the first guy who actually stands up and says, "Hey, let's have some discussions on this," and I don't think this guy's a real prophet. They go and complain to the administration about it, right? Notice you got that same sort of thing, right? In areas where where Islam can just take over and dominate. That's what it does. In areas where it's a small minority of the population, it's all, oh, we're victims, we're being oppressed. Interesting stuff. What a religion here. All right, here we go. Sam Shamood would be a good one to talk about this. But is Jesus the Son of the Most High God, or is he Most High God? I would say it's going to depend on what you mean by Most High God. You could specifically be referring to God the Father with that. But if you're talking about, the one triune God, then Jesus would be both. He would be Son because that's his position in the Trinity. And so he would be God, but he would also be the Son of God as the Son of the Father within the Trinity. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Bible tells us that when a man and woman marry, the two become one flesh. So what does that mean? I mean, obviously they're not sewn together at the hip, right? I think it means that they become one unit. And so I think when you talk about God, the Christian view is that it's one God. Think of God as a unit. One God is manifested in three distinct persons. So in answer to this question, if we look at it that way, Jesus is the Most High God, and he's the Son of the Most High God. If we look at Most High as the Father, he's the Son of the Father, but all of them make up the unit we would call God.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we will have, we'll be doing more on the deity of Christ. As I pointed out, I got a series coming out on the death and resurrection of Jesus, but we'll want to do a ton of videos on the deity of Christ and actually breaking down. But I mean, if you think about that, here's what's awesome. I mean, in the opening chapters of Genesis, we're told that God created man and woman in his image. I mean, he created man in his image, but male and female, he created them. So notice Eve was man, but the Hebrew there is Adam, right? So Adam. So notice here, right? Adam is a name, but it's also kind of a nature, a thing that you are, right? So Adam could be a name. So Adam's name was Adam, but Adam was man, which the word is Adam. So Adam was Adam, Eve was Adam. Eve is distinct from Adam, and yet they're both Adam, but one is named Adam. So it's just interesting that male and female are created in the image of God, and you start seeing this kind of relationship. Just to be clear, you have to be careful with analogies of God, because at the end of the day, there's nothing that's actually like God. All we can do is kind of understand how something can be one in one way and more than one in a different way. But normally when conversations like this start out and people say, what was Jesus? Was he God or the Son of God? I usually say, well, what are you, man or the Son of Man? And the answer is you're both. And so you have to start thinking about what you mean by these terms. You can be a son of man in one way, and you can be a man in a different way, right? And so when you're talking about God or the Son of God, you got to look at that in the light of Christian theology.
By the way, just if I can plug a video, a lecture I did on did Jesus think he was divine? Did Jesus think he was God?
Plug all you want. What's it called?
I think it's did Jesus think he was God, or did Jesus think he's divine? It's on my YouTube channel. And I've got a lecture on that where I argue historically, for historical reasons, that Jesus did think of himself as divine.
And he has a long chapter on that in this book, right? Where you talk about like the it's something about who did Jesus think he was. There's a long section on that in this book, right? If I remember right.
I don't think so.
I thought you did. Maybe not. Okay.
This lecture
claimed to be God.
Did Jesus claim to be God?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to pull this up here.
I swear I thought you did towards the end, but maybe I'm misremembering. Yeah. Anyways, this book is still awesome, by the way, guys. So I recommend this book all the time because this was a good book. I mean, don't let it intimidate you by how big it looks. It is big, but there's a lot of footnotes in here too. So just so you guys know.
Yeah, a little over 2,000.
Which I love because I hate the end notes.
Oh, I hate end notes too.
Yeah.
It seems like everybody hates end notes, but the publisher still hates them. So I don't get it,
I don't get it.
Listen to the people.
Yeah, exactly.
People don't like end notes.
I know. So, but the book is awesome because it will give you a good, and he tries to be as objective as he can in the whole book and tries to give a good synopsis and understanding of all the different things that relate to the historical Jesus and the resurrection in the first century, right? Was it just first, second century? Yeah, because you had Josephus in there and some other stuff. But
yeah, mainly first century, but early second century.
Yeah.
All right, here you go. What is that pause?
Cuz.
You did that on purpose?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure we weren't actually paused or something like that.
Pulse up there.
Here's a question for you, Mike. Muhammad Hussein, so sounds like a Muslim. How many women visited the tomb? According to Matthew, 2 Marys. According to Mark, 2 Marys and Salome. According to Luke, a group of women. And according to John, Mary Magdalene. Clear gospel contradictions. These guys, resurrection destroyed. I have to point. I'll point out something after Mike goes. But go ahead.
Well, I think what's going on here is a compositional device we might refer to as literary spotlighting. Now, I found this very, very common throughout Plutarch's lives that he does this, and we do it in our everyday conversations as well. It's just part of ordinary communication. So think of, you go to a theatrical performance and you see a number of actors on stage, and then the lights go out and a spotlight shines on a single actor. Now, you know that there are other actors on stage, but the spotlight is focusing on that one, so that's the only one you see. Literary spotlighting is when an author knows that there are various people who are involved in performing an act, but only mentions one because that's the only one that is of biographical relevance or historical relevance at that point. So I think that this is what's going on in the resurrection narratives, and the number of women who go to the tomb isn't the only time it's being used there. I think there's 4 cases of it within the resurrection narrative. So for example, Mary Magdalene, I think, is the main woman who's going, and I think it is telling that in John chapter 20, verse 1, it says, "Early in the morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and found it empty, and she ran back to Peter and the beloved disciple and said, 'They have taken the Lord, and we don't know where they laid him.'" Well, who's we? So that's one. And then John says that Peter and the beloved disciple got up and ran to the tomb and found it empty. Luke says that Peter got up and ran to the tomb and found it empty. Well, is it Peter and the beloved disciple, or is it just Peter? Luke doesn't say it's just Peter. And 12 verses later, you have Jesus talking to the Emmaus disciples, and it says their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And so they're telling Jesus what happened. And they say, we thought he was the Messiah, but he was crucified. And then this morning, our women folk went to the tomb and saw angels, said Jesus had been raised. And then some of our own went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said. Well, but Luke, just 12 verses later, you said it was just Peter. No, he didn't say just Peter, but Peter was the lead disciple at that point. And so he just mentions Peter. So you have that going on. And by the way, when they went to the tomb, Matthew and Mark report that there was one angel, and Luke and John narrate 2 angels. So what's going on there? Well, it's probably literary spotlighting again, in that Mark, followed by Matthew, is shining their spotlight on the angel who's doing the announcing. Yeah. So I think you got these 4 instances that are going on just in the resurrection narratives of literary spotlighting.
Yeah, it's a contradiction. So I was trying to say it's a contradiction. It would be a contradiction if it said there was only. So it's like if I say, I'm here with David Wood, right? And then later I say, yeah, I was sitting down with Mike and David, and another time I was like, yeah, we were all doing something, right?
Yeah, or imagine if you guys were explaining what you're watching right now, and you said, one of you went and said, someone said, what were you doing? You said, I was watching David Wood.
Yeah.
And then another one said, I was watching David Wood and John McCrae. Another one said, I was watching David Wood and Mike Licona. Another one said, I was watching David Wood and Mike Licona and John McCrae. Yeah.
It wouldn't be a contradiction, right? It'd be a contradiction if you said, only David Wood, only David Wood was there. And so it's the same kind of thing when you're looking at the Bible too, when there's 1 or 2. But a real quick question: who is Aunt Meme? I see Aunt Meme comment in the comment, and I don't know you. You're not related to me. I'm just messing around. I don't know who that is. That's dope though.
That would be funny if you had you end up with like Aunt Meme and Uncle Meme and
Uncle
Meme Junior and Little Meme and stuff like that.
Little Meme, big
That'd be
Meme.
cool. Hey, Tatiana said, Boom Squad members are immune to the slow mode in the chat. Is that true, everyone? I did not know that. That's actually that's actually cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Now, what's slow mode?
Slow mode is where you can click on. I mean, you can set up YouTube to where people can only post comments like every 60 seconds, or you can make it every 2 minutes or every 30 seconds, how you want to do it. If you don't set that, then basically people can make as many comments as they want as fast as they want. The problem is it becomes hard to read if people are posting. So I normally put a 60-second slow mode on there, which means someone can only post a comment every 60 seconds, because otherwise I can't. I mean, I don't come close to keeping up with them even with the 60 seconds, So I can't. The point is I can't even see them fast enough if I don't have that on. So
what do you have to do to be a Boom Squad member?
You just go to my channel and click on join, and you'd want to do that because
the channel's awesome. Hey, here's another debunking of the resurrection. It's from Muhammad Hussein. Says, according to John, there is no body found in tomb. According to Mark, they saw Jesus
in the tomb.
That's what I was trying to understand his comment. I don't understand what it means. But he's saying
that's what he said. So Muhammad Hussein, our Muslim friend here, says, according to John, there is no body found in tomb. According to Mark, they saw Jesus.
I think he's never read. Probably.
No, he's looking up he's going to a website and copying and pasting stuff without ever bothering to actually read the sources. Shocker, shocker, shocker.
All four Gospels report that the tomb was empty of Jesus' body, right? Now, the only kind of difference that I could think in that sense, bodies in the tomb, is that John mentions and Luke mentions. All right, so Mark, Luke, and John mention that the angel or angels are inside the tomb, right? But Matthew says that the angel rolled the stone out of the way and sat on it, meaning he would be outside the tomb. So you could say that the position of the angels when they saw it was different, you know? So I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. You know, you can have some things. I mean, maybe the angel actually went inside the tomb later on. Maybe it was the guards that reported that the angel rolled the stone away and sat on it. I mean, how else would they know? Because the women weren't there. So that testimony could not have come from the women. And sometimes, you know, history is just a little more complex than we may imagine. I think it was three years ago here in Georgia, there was some convicts that were being transported, and somehow they overcame the two deputies, killed them, and took their guns. And so they were loose for a while. I slept a little longer than my wife that morning, and when I came out, Debbie said to me, hey, you'd be interested in this story because these two convicts that have been on the run, they went to steal a car, and the guy saw it, and he had a gun in his house, and he came out and he held him at gunpoint until the police came. I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mike's a gun nut, just in case.
Second Amendment, man, you know? So, but then the news came on, the story came on just a couple minutes later, and it said, yeah, these guys were involved in a high-speed car chase with the police. They crashed the car, and the police got them. And I said to Debbie, what? That contradicts what you said. She said, now hold on a second, just wait. And then they came back and they told the whole story. They'd been in a high-speed chase. The car crashed. They fled on foot through the woods. They came to the guy's house. They were trying to steal the car, and he came out and held them at gunpoint until the police got there.
Those sounded like completely different stories of what happened.
That's right.
That's what happened.
And we got to admit that sometimes this is going on in accounts, and we don't realize it. And, you know, I'm very hesitant on sometimes to say that there is definitely a contradiction. And that's not just for the Gospels. That was for Plutarch and any ancient thing.
Yeah.
You know? I think we can say it's a good candidate for a contradiction on some occasions, but I don't know that we can say with certainty.
You definitely don't want to do it with, you know, one here and two there and things like that. Especially when you got Mary Magdalene and it just talks about her, but then she says, we don't know where they've laid him. And it sounds like she's talking about a group. You should be looking at that saying, hey, maybe I need to be careful here.
Well, you got some of the dumbest comments I've ever read in my life.
Oh, yeah? Want to go through some dumb comments?
Yeah, if you want. Hi.
I just read it. This is good. Hang on. Shout out to Liger System for joining The Boom Squad. The Boom Squad.
The Boom Squad. Hi, I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not going to try. It says, you guys worship the cross.
We worship the cross.
Okay. Because Jesus dying at cross. So if Jesus dying at electric chair, you guys still worship electric chair. Ha 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 ha.
John, have you ever worshipped a cross?
I'm kind of shocked by that comment.
Yeah. Oh, are you?
What's wrong with it?
Good pun.
No, it's not.
It's
not.
That was good.
It's just the way I'm wired.
Oh my goodness. Guys, just so you know, back in the day when Mike and Nabil would hang out, because Nabil would do that too. It's really annoying. Everyone hates it. Just coming up with puns all the time. But then Mike and Nabil would get together and they would just go back and forth and see who would, not come up with a pun.
I'll tell you who's best is Paul Copan.
Is he?
Really?
Oh, he's unbelievable.
Really?
Notice
Nobody
it's
can beat
always
Paul
it's
Copan.
always nerds. It's always just total nerds who are coming up with the puns. It's a nerd humor thing.
But notice that it's a psychopath who doesn't like that kind of humor.
Yeah. So if you don't like puns, you're a psychopath. All right, let's go with this. But okay.
Right.
So here, you guys worship cross because Jesus dying at cross. How many of you guys have ever worshipped the cross?
Oh,
Everybody and all the Christians everywhere worship the cross.
Never met a Christian who worshipped a cross.
But if Jesus,
Cana?
so if Jesus, go ahead.
I was going to say,
yeah.
but if you could find, certain people of traditions who would like bow down to a cross.
Yeah.
They're focused on Jesus, but they would bow down to a cross.
It's not the cross.
If you think that's worshiping, now I would certainly be careful about that. So I would not encourage people to bow down to a cross. But my point is, if you think that's worshiping a cross, what do you do with every Muslim 5 times a day bowing down to the Kaaba? By your definition, that would be worshiping the Kaaba. So Muslims worship the Kaaba, and so you could say, well, haha, Muslims worship a cube. If it had been a circle, they'd be worshiping a circle. Durr, right? Come on. No, sorry, we don't worship the cross. Never met a Christian. We worship the Almighty, the Triune God of Scripture. Well, Liger's system upgraded to Boom Squad Advanced.
Oh snap!
Then he upgraded to Boom Squad Ultra.
Oh snap!
No,
Liger
what's that?
system. Are you
What's
sure?
the difference with those?
Are you sure you're not? You get different perks.
Yeah.
For the past 2 months, I haven't been completely consistent on the perks because there were certain videos like Muhammad's Boom Boom Room that I was going to give them advance notice to, but I haven't even gotten to them because as anyone's been following my stuff, everyone in my family's dying left and right. So anyway,
Mike, you should join the Boom Squad though. It'll be a blast.
what the heck is wrong with you guys? No, come on, guys. I'm about to cut this live stream. Sorry, just to cut you guys off. Yeah, but you can. It's basically people can contribute different amounts and stuff, and you can have different perks.
So,
assigned to
do
that.
you have to do that on a monthly basis, or do you do it once? Does that make you a permanent member of that level?
No,
you can change it at any time, but yeah, it's a monthly sort of thing.
So once you realize David Wood is heretical, you can leave if you need, so that way you don't feel bad.
B.J. Richardson, welcome to Boom Squad Basic. The Boom Squad. The Boom Squad.
Yo, Brax, that's Brax.
What the heck
That's
is
my
wrong
boy.
with you?
Yo,
Trinity
Brax.
Radio says this episode is making me very cross. Here you have it.
Hey, Braxton, or maybe that's Jonathan, or
It's probably Braxton.
Braxton.
Yeah.
He's great. I love both of them, man. They're cool.
Yeah, my dudes.
All right, let's go through. Let's burn through some comments here. John, find
All right.
some. I got a couple I can respond to real quick.
Cool.
Fred Sanford said,
Oh, hold on, we got to follow up to that last one. It says,
Oh, really?
okay, so if you saying you didn't worship cross, then if Jesus dying got an electric chair, then the cross at least have 5 electric chair, because I see every church has at least 5 crosses. All right, we're just
yeah,
Simple.
okay. So let's go through that again. Haya says, okay, if you saying you didn't worship cross, then if Jesus dying at electric chair, then the crutch at least have 5 electric chair, because I see every church at least they have 5 cross. So the claim here, and by the way, Haya, we know you didn't invent this. This is one of those completely ridiculous and
You're
stupid
not going to give them
arguments.
that much credit.
Yeah, people say, oh, you guys have a cross. Let me break this down for you. Before the spread of Christianity, the cross was a symbol of Roman power. When you saw one, you didn't think about salvation or anything else. You thought, the Romans will put me on one of these if I get out of line. It's a symbol of Roman power. Do not mess with us or we will crush you, right? After the time of Jesus, After the time of Jesus, it becomes a symbol of God's power to use the worst that human beings can do to achieve the greatest things in the world. As far as why Christians would have a cross or something, you also have Jesus teaching things like we have to take up our cross daily. And so things like having a cross are reminders of that we have to take up our cross daily, namely that we are to constantly be dying to our own selves and our own fleshly desires and so on, and to focus on God. Now, the idea that you would have a problem, you would call that worshiping the cross, is so ridiculous that I'm afraid I just can't take it seriously. Any other thoughts on that?
I just want to say, I hope that we got our point across.
It's like getting worse and worse. You guys aren't getting better as you get into meme mode.
You nailed it, man.
Oh my goodness. Fred Sanford here says, a Muslim friend told me that Ahmadis are not Muslims. Do they take the same Shahada as the Sunni? Yes, they do take the same Shahada. They believe in all the 5 pillars. They believe in all the 6 articles of faith and so on. The real difference between Ahmadis and Orthodox Sunni Muslims is that Ahmadis have a different view of end times, right? So critics of the Ahmadis will say, you believe in a prophet who came after Muhammad. Well, guess what? All Muslims are supposed to believe in a prophet after Muhammad. They're supposed to believe in the return of Jesus. Ahmadis believe that already happened. And so their view is they disagree with Sunni Muslims on the time of the return of Jesus. So Ahmadis believe it already happened and so on. So that's the main difference. And so yeah, if a person wants to say you're not a Muslim because of that, guess what? You could probably point to almost any Muslim and say, here's something you're getting wrong in your understanding, and therefore you're not a real Muslim. But if you want a more thorough discussion of that, Fred Sanford, I have a video titled, was Nabil Qureshi a Muslim? Or was Nabil Qureshi a real Muslim? Or something like that. And it's because people were pointing out that because Nabil was an Ahmadi, that he wasn't a real Muslim and so on. So I made a video going through the similarities and differences between Ahmadis and Sunnis. And I pointed out, as you pointed out, don't they take the Shahada? Yeah, Muhammad said if you recite the Shahada, you're a Muslim. So wait a minute, they recite the same Shahada. You have others that if you keep the pillars, the 5 pillars of Islam, then you're a Muslim. Well, guess what? The Ahmadis do that. And so in order to, I point out the only way you can get around this, the only way from the Muslim sources that you can get around this and say they're not real Muslims, is you would have to use something like Surah 4, verse 65, which says that if you find any resistance to anything Muhammad has said, you're not a real Muslim. And you'd have to say that they're getting something wrong, and therefore they have resistance against Muhammad, and therefore they're not real Muslims. But again, if that's your standard for what a real Muslim is, I think that there are not going to be a lot of real Muslims in the world, because almost any Muslim I can point to, I can start pointing to, because their sources are so hopelessly inconsistent, I can always point to something in their sources that they're not following. And so, yeah, you could say anyone's not a Muslim.
Yeah.
Here's a question. I don't know if you know the answer to this. Renee says, I wonder why Bart doesn't view them as Greco-Roman biographies. This shows you how behind I am on the comments, right? This is like 1,000 years ago.
Oh.
But wait, I thought Ehrman did.
No, I don't think he's got a problem with the Gospels being Greco-Roman biographies.
I don't think so either. Well, Mike's actually had how many debates with him? 3?
6.
6.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And we're friends.
That's cool. The written one was awesome too. I read the whole thing, by the way.
Oh, and that was. I've enjoyed all the debates with him, but the written one at what's the name of it? Thebestschools.org.
Yeah. Yep.
That's probably the most substantive one we've had, because especially as Dave. I don't know, John, if you've debated before, have you?
No.
Okay, so as David would know, you say things during the debate. You don't have a lot of time to be thinking about it. You're saying things on the fly. And later on, you might look back and say, well, I wish I'd said that a little bit differently, or I could have said it differently and made it stronger. I missed a couple of points here. But in that written debate, we had, I think, like 2 weeks or 1 week between each of our responses to really think about how we wanted to articulate it. So it wasn't on the fly. So it's a more substantive debate on the reliability of the Gospels. Are the Gospels historically reliable? It's more substantive than the one we did live.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you liked it.
No, yeah, it was awesome. I thought it was good too. Hey, but there is a racist comment here from Rachel. It says, one of these guys is not like the other. She's clearly referring to me because I'm black. I was just kidding.
I think she tuned in late with the yellow shirts.
Or, yeah, it could be the gray shirt.
All right, here you go, Mike. How do you respond to the arguments against the resurrection of Richard Carrier and Robert Price?
Hey, that's Matt. What's up, man? I know Matt.
Hey, Matt. You know what? The last time we did the thing with Tim, Matt said that he'd been an atheist, and he read my big book on the resurrection, and he gave up his atheism and became a Christian because he said, even though he didn't want to become a Christian, he couldn't deny the evidence, and he said so. He just couldn't reject it. He became a Christian. He says Christ is risen. So, hey, Matt, I'm glad you said something here, sent in a question. And yeah, thanks for those comments. So, you know, it's been a while since Richard Carey and I debated. I don't remember all of his objections. I think the last time we debated was 2009 or 2010. We've had 2 debates. They've been enjoyable. I enjoyed both of them. I don't actually remember all of his arguments, and I'm not sure of the arguments of Bob Price, to be honest with you. But you know, these guys don't even think Jesus existed. And if they're not convinced by the evidence that, even by the evidence that Jesus existed, we shouldn't be surprised that they're not convinced by the evidence that Jesus rose from the dead. I like both Richard. I like Bob. I find Bob to be fun to be with.
You like Richard? No, I agree with Bob. Bob, I've only met him once, but he seemed like a fun guy. But polyamorous Richard Carrier? Come on, dude. Well, polyamorous Richard Carrier?
You know,
Both have debated him a couple times.
I don't agree with the lifestyle he has, but I've got no beef against him. So, but yeah, I'm not. I just, if you can type out a comment on what Richard and Bob,
well, yeah,
how they argue for the resurrection, I'd be happy to address it. I just don't.
I haven't followed Richard's stuff since, you know, a long time ago when he was saying that he's he's greater than Aristotle or something.
Yeah.
You know, those responses that you gave about monkeys flying out his butt and all this stuff.
So yeah, let me give you some.
He's wild.
Richard Carrier had his argument that I call it the argument from large breasts. Right? I was reading this stuff in his book, and I was like, "Are you serious?" Right? He gave his argument from large breasts, which is
obviously God exists, right? Is that what he's
No. He said large breasts can cause back pain for women, and therefore a good God would not create women with large breasts, and therefore God doesn't exist. He actually argued for the non-existence of God based on some women having large breasts. I kind of think of all of Richard's arguments like that, right? When you see him making these kinds of arguments over and over again, then this kind of goes back to the 99-1 rule and stuff. If you've got a guy and he has his PhD was in Greco-Roman science, the history of Greco-Roman science or something like that, and he's saying a bunch of stuff, and he's saying, right here with the creed, this was just talking about a spiritual resurrection, and they believed in a spiritual Jesus, not a physical Jesus, and this came about later. And it totally flies in the face of everything that modern scholars agree on. And you see the guy giving his argument from butt monkeys. You can look that up. He says the fact that there are no blue monkeys flying out of my butt proves that there are no blue monkeys. And I was like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Right? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. When the guy who's making arguments from large breasts is giving the same stupid arguments, same kinds of stupid arguments against the resurrection and so on, I can't take him seriously. So that's my view. But yeah, I would say, look at the historical evidence for the resurrection and see if Carrier's or Price's arguments actually account for the evidence. They don't. They're both clearly trying to avoid something and not doing a good job.
I will say that there are a couple of footnotes in my book where I address some of Carrier's arguments, especially I think with the nature of Jesus's resurrection body and how Richard interprets 1 Corinthians 15. I think it's highly problematic. So if I remember right, I do deal with that there with Paul's passage of 1 Corinthians 15, 42 through 45.
That's probably his best argument, I would think.
But it's not very good.
I know, it's not that good. I think it's his best one, probably. That's why I really liked your.
You think you think it's better than his argument from large breasts?
No, well, actually, maybe the monkey butt one, blue monkey butt.
Blue monkeys flying out of his butt. No blue monkeys flying out of his butt proves there are no blue monkeys.
Yo, our boy Vocab Alone's in the house. Cap,
What?
What it do? Yo, he said Vocab actually debated Richard Carrier, which was a good debate. So you guys can go watch.
He said we're matching besties now. No Cam.
We should have had Licona in the middle, huh?
Yeah, we should have. Then we'd be like a mutant Oreo. Finding Truth says, according to Matt Dillahunty, the narrative of the resurrection is nothing more than just claims, not evidence. How would you guys respond? Claims are not evidence. Now, guys, I am debating Dillahunty. I do not know anything he said on this topic. So
this came up in his debate with Mike Winger.
So he's saying claims are not evidence?
Yeah, he basically says all you have in these documents, these historical documents, is a bunch of claims. These claims are not evidence.
Well, obviously claims can be evidence. If a bunch of people, what do we know from history that's not claims,
exactly.
right?
And science, right?
Yeah. So
it's when you have claims that you're using it within a hypothesis or a theory that can become evidence that hypothesis theory is true.
Yeah.
So yeah. You have claims that Brutus and the other conspirators assassinated Caesar. Those are the claims.
Yeah.
But it becomes evidence when you put together a hypothesis.
Yeah.
Now, notice it would, hey, this guy robbed me. If you were in court, you say this guy robbed me. He put a gun to me, and robbed me. That's a claim. That's a claim, and depending on other things, that might be enough or it might not be enough. If you have 5 people and they all seem trustworthy and they're all say, "Hey, this dude robbed this guy,"
and then you're putting together a case against this guy, then those 5 claims become evidence.
Yep, that's what happens. And then because I don't even understand Dillahunty's distinction either, he didn't clarify it well. But still, you put all these. Anyways, I would just say the same thing would apply to this, to science in a way too. All these scientists, it's not as though the data is just like, writing books and stuff. People are making claims about the data. So if you say, "Oh, claims are not evidence," then you can't even trust science at that point. So
he makes a number of mistakes in these kinds of things. Like he goes against the minimal facts approach, and he says the minimal facts approach that Gary came up with, Gary Habermas, that it's weak because these are cherry picked. Well, no, they're not. Yeah. These are the facts that are regarded as virtually certain by a consensus of scholars, a heterogeneous consensus. So you're looking at skeptics and Christians and people of all different kind of faiths and worldviews. So they're not cherry picked. And then he says, most would go with, you include all the different facts. Why are you just doing a minimal fact? Well, because not everybody acknowledges these other things as facts. So what you do is you look for some least common denominators and say, what is it that qualified scholars on the subject can all agree on? What are these things? Yeah. Let's deal with these. Let's start by dealing with these. And let's formulate hypotheses that try to account for these. All right. And the ones that, if a hypothesis can't even account for these facts, then that hypothesis needs to come back to the drawing board or be abandoned altogether.
Oh, yeah.
If it can't even account for the things that we are virtually certain are true.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got a couple of hypotheses that can both say they can account for these facts, well, now you go to some other facts that maybe not are agreed upon by all.
Yeah, and Dillahunty's the king of not providing an alternative hypothesis. And you won't provide an alternative hypothesis because then you compare them and then you can see the deficiency in the alternate hypotheses. So he won't provide one.
Again, I don't really want to comment on the methodology here because I'd have to look closer at what he said. But if he's just saying that claims aren't evidence, notice that would fly in the face of all history. That would fly in the face of all. Just our daily living.
And his claim.
And his claim. So he made the claim. So he made the claim that claims are not evidence. And so, but this is a problem. This is a problem in atheism that the method is invented as they go along to avoid conclusions that they don't want. right? So I was watching a debate between, I should put these clips together. I was watching a debate between Richard Dawkins and John Lennox. This is years ago, so I hope I'm getting these right? And Richard Dawkins argues, he's responding to the argument, he's responding to the cosmological argument, right? And when he responds to check this out. He's responding to the cosmological argument by saying, look, you can't, as you go back in time, the universe gets simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler. You can't go back to something way more complicated like God to explain what starts off very simple, right? You go back to something simple and you don't go to something vastly more complicated. So that's how he refuted the cosmological argument. As you go back in time, the universe gets simpler and simpler and simpler until it's just a little singularity. And you don't want to bring, something as complex as God in there. So that's his response. Then when he's responding to the argument from fine-tuning, the fine-tuning of the cosmos, why are the constants of physics and so on so perfectly calibrated to allow human life? He says, well, if you go back, then we have the multiverse. And so there's this vast array of alternative universes that are, this vast machine cranking out all these other universes, and we're just the lucky one. But notice what he just did. Notice what he just did, right? He got back to the beginning of our universe, the singularity, and then to explain some feature of ours, he goes back to an infinite array of alternative universes, which, guess what? By definition, is infinitely more complex than ours. So notice it's what method can I adopt to respond to this argument, and I do not care if I'm contradicting myself. I just don't care, right? So if I'm avoiding this argument, then what can I use to avoid this argument? Then I'm going to say, well, you can't go back to something more complex to explain something simple. And then I'm responding to this argument. What's my rule? Well, I got no problem going back to something vastly more complex. It's always adopt a method, even if it's completely ridiculous, if it helps you avoid the conclusion that theists are offering. So,
hey, Billy says, don't cough in Licona's face. Yeah, no kidding.
You guys are dead. You guys are already dead. I could cough in your face all we want right now.
We're going to give Licona coronavirus, and then we're going to be down a great mine thanks to this.
If I get it, everyone's getting it. That's all I'm saying. If I get it, everyone's getting it. So
see how he rolls? Say that's that prison mindset, son.
Oh wait, let me post this link here. So this is someone pointed out that Cameron just posted a video on this. And no,
I haven't watched that yet, but I did see the other day that he had posted something on the Dillahunty thing that claims are not evidence.
Right. Yeah, I didn't watch it because we're running around recording and stuff like that, so we haven't watched any new videos that are coming out on any channels. But I'll go ahead and post it right here. Anyone wants to check that out? I just posted the link right there.
All right.
305 Thief says, tell Mike to give us a discount on his book. It's funny that he's 305 Thief and he's asking for a discount on your book. Why don't you just steal one? Go to a Christian bookstore and steal one. You thief.
Actually, I have no say over that. I mean, the publishers. I can't give discounts. I sell books at a if I'm speaking at a conference, and I usually sell them for less than you can get them on Amazon. But I don't just sell them otherwise. You just get them through Amazon or ChristianBook.com or Barnes & Noble or Abe Books.
Got a question from Jacob H here. Oh, let me get rid of this other question. Got a question from Jacob H. He says, hey, David, big fan. Question for Mike about minimal facts argument. Doesn't Galatians 1 and 2 tell us Paul's gospel was one of grace, not from man? Thank you.
Galatians
1 of grace, not from man.
Yeah, do you understand what he means here?
No, I think what he's saying is, when Paul talks about where he got...
It's a revelation from God,
exactly,
not from man.
Jesus, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, from God, you're right.
I mean, sometimes skeptics will bring this up and they'll say, okay, well, Paul says he didn't receive it from man. He got it from a revelation from God. But yet when you come to 1 Corinthians 15, he says, I delivered to you what I also received. And he's talking, I want to remind you of the gospel message that I preached to you. And then he says, I delivered to you what I also received. And he gives the oral tradition. Well, I think he's just saying here in 1 Corinthians 15, this is the gospel message I want to remind you of the gospel message I preached to you. Now, I delivered to you what I also received. And then he gives the oral tradition. So he delivered to them the oral tradition, which is pretty much an outline of what the gospel message is, the death, burial, resurrection, and appearances of Jesus. But that doesn't mean that's different from the gospel that he received as a revelation from God. Let's say on the road to Damascus when Jesus appeared to him. That is what Paul is referring to there, I believe. He's not talking about the oral tradition. That
well, and I would have to say he's pointing out Galatians 1 and 2, and those are paradigm chapters of Paul going up to confirm his revelations by going to the original disciples, right?
Yep.
No, Galatians was written before in Acts 15, the Jerusalem Council. That's what scholars believe it probably was, because he would have used the Jerusalem Council.
Galatians 2?
Yeah, Galatians.
There's split on that,
Yeah.
A lot of them think that's the same one. It's tough.
Yeah, that's
a tough one.
But this one seems to be talking about the minimum facts argument. So I'm assuming he's talking something about what I'm trying to think. What minimal fact has to do with the gospel of grace? That's what I was thinking. I don't know what.
Yeah, the minimal facts argument would be we're going to use facts that are so strongly evidenced. They are supported by the data that a near consensus or an overwhelming majority of critical scholars who study the subject grant them. And then you build a case based on those minimal facts. The way Gary Habermas used to do it is like, hey, I'm just going to use your own facts. And I can give you a case with that. You know? So that's the way it started off with Gary.
Yeah.
Hey. I think, I kind of think the point is Paul believes he got the gospel message through revelation, and yet in the minimal facts approach focuses a lot on 1 Corinthians 15, the creed there. And so...
that just shows, the tension that some skeptics bring up about he received it from revelation, or I delivered to you what I also received. I don't see any tension there.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, and right here in Galatians, so Paul received revelations, but Paul's also a guy who believes that Satan can appear as an angel of light. And so he realizes he's gotten revelations, but he goes up to the apostles and wants to make sure that he wasn't, as he said, I wasn't running in vain.
Yeah,
so he was willing to go up and say, hey, I've got my revelations that I received. I'm going to go up to the apostles and make sure. And think about that. Why wouldn't you, right? If you receive some sort of revelation and you can actually test and verify that to make sure it comes from God by taking a trip and going in and asking some questions about people who are actually there. Why wouldn't you do that? But Paul actually does that, and he says what they extended the right hand of fellowship to him. So they're acknowledging, yep, what you received, that's exactly correct. But yeah, but the creed there, the creed, he received that from others. So Paul, there's no conflict here. Paul received revelations, no question, but he also received traditions that he passed down from others. So
it's the form of the content that he delivered to them and what he had received from others. The format of the content.
Hey, this guy says a room of 3 mature men that still need to reinforce their man-made religious beliefs. Yeah. What do you guys have to say?
3 mature men that still need to reinforce their man-made religious beliefs.
I mean, this is kind of like the Muslim comment.
Look at this. Look, a man in the comments section who still needs to reaffirm his atheism or whatever it is by trolling the comments section using a man-made computer. Yeah, great guys, you really refuted us. Great, thank you for adding that brilliant content. You were stumped on that one. You're smashing it, dude. You're smashing it. All right.
I was just going to say, Robert Chopra says, Mike Licona, I'm a big fan. Just so you know, you got a fan out there.
So you're the one.
Thanks a bunch.
All right, here we have Hindu historian. Hindu historian says, I think it's unfair. And so, as you might notice, Hindu historian is a Hindu. Hindu historian, also regular on the channel, here a lot, has discussions, very reasonable. Actually was encouraging me and William Lane Craig to check out Hinduism and start responding to the positions of Hinduism. But let's check this out here. Hindu historian says, I think it's unfair the disciples actually saw the risen Jesus, whereas every other Christian since has had to believe he rose despite it being such an extraordinary thing. But then he adds, by the way, no slow mode for me. So yes, I guess that is correct that Boom Squad members do not have slow mode.
Yo, that's dope.
That is dope. That's weird. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you look at the word Makarios, the Greek word Makarios, which is the word for blessed, we see it in the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are those, the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Sometimes we interpret that and say, blessed, what does that mean? Well, God will bless the poor in spirit. God will bless the pure in heart, the merciful, etc. But the word doesn't actually mean that. It means joyful, happy, carefree, and in more recent years, New Testament scholars have recognized another, a prominent, in many cases, definition or meaning behind makarios, and that is flourishing, to flourish. And so he said, hey, you can flourish spiritually when you're poor in spirit. The merciful will flourish in their spiritual walk. Those who are pure in heart will flourish in their walk with God. Now, keeping that in mind, you go to John chapter 20, right? And Jesus appears to Thomas, who had been doubting, who wanted to touch him, see him, touch him. And so you've got Jesus, he comes in and he allows Thomas to touch him, invites him to touch him. And Thomas says, my Lord and my God. And the next verse, Jesus says, Thomas, you have seen and believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and still believe. Well, the word for blessed there is makarios again. And what Jesus is saying, Thomas, you've seen and believed, but those who will come to believe, they may not see me as you guys have, but they can still flourish in their Christian walk. And I know all three of us here, none of us have seen Jesus personally, but we look at the evidence, we have a relationship with God, and we can flourish in our Christian life. Would I like to see Jesus? Absolutely. But you know what? Paul talks about having a thorn in the flesh because he had these great heavenly revelations, right? And God gave him a thorn in the flesh in order to keep him humble. Well, I'll tell you what, sometimes I think about God. I'd like to have something even more like an appearance of Jesus, but if that comes with a thorn in the flesh, you know what? I think I might have enough evidence as it is now. So I think he has given us sufficient evidence. Mm-hmm. Would I like more? Yeah, I'd like more. Would it be sufficient? Would it increase my faith? Yeah, perhaps. But, I could always go back to having some sort of doubt. Well, how do I know that was really Jesus rather than Satan appearing, deceiving me on it? You could always have those kinds of questions.
Mm-hmm. Tufail Ahmed here has just been trolling with he's not, just so everyone knows, he's not actually thinking of any of this himself. He's just copying parts of a list that supposedly compare Christianity and Islam. So that's trolling. So go ahead and block. I see he's already been timed out, but go ahead and block him. Guys, if you want, we sit here and interact with Muslims. We sit here and interact with atheists. We interact with Christians. But if you're just going to come and pull up a website and be posting a bunch of ridiculous nonsense, then
that's lazy, bro.
Yeah, we don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
But as a nice parting gesture, we'll go ahead and pick one of your comments here. So check this out. And this because really, I mean, Tufail, we don't want to. The problem is if I thought Tufail was being genuine and had a genuine objection, be happy to discuss it. When you're just again pulling up a website, a list on a website and posting things, and that's all you're doing, and every 60 seconds you're cutting and pasting something, you're not really having a discussion. But as a nice parting gesture, Tufail said, "Why are you not in your original language?" The Bible answers, "Because people have made a lot of changes in me." Quran, "I'm in my original language, Arabic, and not corrupted." Now think about how stupid this is. On how many levels this is stupid. Mike, we have the Bible in its original languages, right?
Yep.
We do. Okay. So we have the Bible in its original languages. We also have the Bible in translation. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Do we have the Quran in its original language? Yep. Yeah. We got and we have the Quran in translation. So think about how dumb this is. No, we don't have the original language Bible. Well, this shows you haven't done 60 seconds of actual research if you don't know that we have the Old Testament in the original Hebrew and Aramaic and the New Testament in the original Greek. Those are the original languages of Scripture. What else do we have? We have translations to allow people to read in other languages. You've got the exact same thing with the Quran. But notice, you're completely wrong about not having the Bible in its original language. But then you say, because you don't have the Bible in its original language, the reason for that is because there are all these changes to it.
I was thinking that
I'm thinking that's incredibly stupid. Wood, your entire argument is based on the idea that we don't have the Bible in its original languages, and the reason we don't is because there are all these changes. One, two, he's assuming that
How would you know there were changes?
Yeah,
I know. That's why I say you can tell he's just copying stuff.
and then he says since we have the Quran in its original language, it's Arabic and not corrupted. What planet are you from? Read your own sources. You haven't studied the Bible. You haven't studied the history of the Quran. Your Muslim sources talk about 2 entire chapters of the Quran coming up missing. 2 entire chapters. That's according to Abu Musa. That's according to Abu Musa in Sahih Muslim. He talks about Muslims hardening their hearts, not reciting these 2 chapters enough, and they forgot them. And he uses this to encourage other Muslims not to harden their hearts and stop reciting the Quran. We don't want to lose more of it. Large passages of the Quran were lost when the people who had them memorized died in battle. Individual verses were lost because they were eaten by Aisha's sheep. This is what you find if you actually go to your sources. Why don't you do this? Why do you spout complete nonsense? Why do you do this? Why do you go to a website and say, I'm going to post this without bothering to do 60 seconds of research?
They don't want the truth, dog.
They don't want the truth, son.
They can't handle the truth.
Yeah, that was dope. You know, if you didn't know about the goat eating it, that's just bad research.
Mike, that was a bad one. All right, so bye, Tufail. that was our parting gift to you. Couple of super chats and super stickers here. Where's my church sock? Says God the Father in heaven and our holy Lord and Savior Jesus Christ bless and protect you all. Thank you, thank you, and please, pray for us. We're trying to get a lot done here. Now, Holistic Python. I happen to know that my friend Sam Shamoon, even though he has the worst live streams in all of history and is the worst troll ever, and is known worldwide as Shameless Shamoon, happens to be an expert on this. So come back when I'm going live with Shamoon, and we will actually go live, and we can do this. But anyway, let's read the comment here. Holistic Python says, Archangel Michael is Jesus Christ. Zechariah 3:2, Jesus says, the Lord rebuke you, Satan. Jude 1:9, Michael says, the Lord rebuke you. Jesus saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Michael cast Satan to earth from heaven. And we will gladly do.
This is a doctrine from Jehovah's Witness doctrine.
Yeah, that's Jehovah's Witness.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just because you did that, we're going to go ahead and have an entire live stream on Jehovah's Witnesses and their arguments, and we will cover that up. So stay tuned.
That's good.
If you want to talk, now keep in mind, we were not bothering you. We were not messing with you. We were not picking on you. We were completely ignoring you. You wanted us to talk about this. So don't come complaining when we do a live stream and we're exposing Jehovah's Witness arguments and theology and say, why are you going after us? Why aren't you just focused on there? It always amazes me that like atheists are like this, right? Like, I'm completely content responding to the objections of Muslims and so on, but I have tons of atheist fans who you know, they don't mess with me at all. They like it when I'm wrecking Islam, but others just come in to mock, not realizing, okay, look, if you eventually are running your mouth enough, eventually I'm going to respond to you and so on. So, guys, if you bring up something and then I eventually go after that position, do not come crying to me later. So, anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a cool. I was actually thinking about getting Sam on for that topic too, but now that you're going to do it, I'm going to have to think of something else.
And John Nepper in the super sticker. That is.
Hey, it's yellow.
Look at the
it's
super
us.
sticker. That is. We have the yellow shirt, and then there's a little green one. I guess that's Mike, but you're gray. What are we at? We're at 9:30. We should probably be wrapping up now because.
We got to get up at what time?
We have to
DW.
Well, I'm not getting up because I'm just going to stay up. We have to leave for the airport at 2 a.m. So John will probably fall asleep and get a couple hours sleep. I'm just going to say heck with it and stay up until I leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably do 1 or 2 more comments while we do. Jay Shy says, Mike, what do you think about atheists claiming the authors are not the apostles? Also, the claim Paul is the only one who gave his own testimony. Only one who gave his own testimony.
Well, the authorship of the Gospels, I think, is a very interesting topic. Some would say, well, the authors are not the apostles. Well, we could certainly say that of Mark and Luke, right? But the early testimony we have is that Mark, his primary source was that of Peter. And that comes from guy named Papias, who is writing somewhere between the first decade of the 2nd century and the middle of the 2nd century, somewhere between the years 100 and 150. The average date that he's placed at is about 130. I'd place him probably earlier than that. I think the first decade of the 2nd century is probably correct. But let's just put it at 130, okay? Papias says he received this information from an associate of one of Jesus' apostles, and that he received this information while that apostle was still alive and teaching, which means that Papias would have received this information sometime in the latter part of the 1st century. So he receives it from someone who knew the Apostle John and received it while John was still teaching. That's pretty amazing. So Mark is reporting what he heard Peter say. That's his primary testimony. Luke says he got his information. He's a little vague here, or ambiguous, I should say. It's hard to determine whether he's saying he got his information from the eyewitnesses or those who received their information from the eyewitnesses, or perhaps he even means both. Certainly got his information from from Mark. He's using Mark as a primary source. So that would have been one of his sources. He got it from someone who received it from the eyewitnesses. And a lot of people would think that he's also receiving it from eyewitnesses. So that's pretty good. The majority of scholars today, Johannine specialists, they do not think that John the son of Zebedee was the author of John's gospel. Now, some of us, like myself, Craig Keener, Craig Blomberg, and some others, we do think it was John the son of Zebedee, but we are a very small minority of New Testament scholars thinking that. Nevertheless, the majority of Johannine specialists, New Testament scholars who specialize in the Gospel of John, would say that the author of John's Gospel, his primary source, was one of Jesus' apostles, perhaps a minor disciple who had traveled with Jesus. It's still based on eyewitness testimony. Matthew's probably the hardest, the most difficult of them all. It's a little hard to unpack, or it would take some time to unpack. Personally, I think that Matthew was very closely involved in the penning of that gospel that has been attributed to him, that he supervised, that he provided a lot of information. And probably there was a scribe who was under Matthew's direction and used some other things like Mark's gospel and some other material. So whereas Mark and Luke, weren't apostles, they're certainly getting their information from credible sources.
Mm-hmm. Hey, this person says, my brother David definitely hardcore pulling an all-nighter. So for the record, me and Mike were working while David was sleeping like a baby.
Yeah, I came back and collapsed. So I did take a nap earlier. So I am staying up all night, heading to the airport.
That's right.
But then I will get home and sleep tomorrow, and then get back to crushing it in videos. Dear Dad said, wish he talked like this in the debate with Muhammad Hijab. So he's saying, hey, this is, because I'm saying, hey, this is stupid, this is ridiculous. Dear Dad, if you follow the aftermath of that, the Muslim organizers insisted that we agree to be respectful and not to insult, not to go off topic, not to bring up certain things that weren't part of the topic. As a Christian, if I make that agreement, I have to stick to it. Unfortunately, there are Muslims who don't believe they have to honor their agreements with non-Muslims, or at least with non-Muslims who criticize Muhammad. And so I don't know if you're saying you wish I would have violated the agreement, but I'm not going to. What I will do is, if you violated an agreement in a debate, I'm taking it out on your prophet later. And by the way, you can you can thank Muhammad Hijab for the Muhammad's boom boom rope, right? That's why we started that, right? It's like, okay, you guys keep breaking, because he wasn't the first. He was part of a long series of guys who would insist on all these rules. I would stick to the rules to the letter, and my opponent would go down the list and violate every last one of them on purpose to throw it in my face that, hey, we don't have to keep our agreements with you. So yeah, and it's always, you can get away with that in the debate, but again, I'm taking it out on your prophet later, so don't come crying to me.
Hey, real quick, this one says, from Open View Mountain, says, David, why do atheists hate philosophy? Now, what's funny about this is I will actually be working on a series, because atheists don't just hate philosophy. A lot of the ones that I talk to.
There are awesome atheist philosophers. What are you talking about?
No, there are. No, I'm saying, like, when I say
the new atheists are very anti-philosophy.
The new atheists, a lot of the online guys, for the most part, this isn't even close to how it is in academia, like the academic atheists and stuff like this. But a lot of the online guys, not all of them, but they tend to not just hate philosophy. They hate the laws of logic. They hate history. They hate science. They hate a whole lot of stuff. So I'll be working on a series on that soon. So you guys can check that out.
Yeah, so I mean, you've got brilliant atheist philosophers and so on, but they're right. The new atheists,
They
have really declared war on philosophy by claiming that whereas science advances very rapidly and it's got all these things you can confirm, and philosophy is just not like that. You're trying to figure all these things out in your head without actually going and seeing how they correspond to reality. So we got to be done with philosophy and get to focus more on science. And but notice if you're talking about throwing out philosophy, that's logic, that's metaphysics, that's epistemology,
using philosophy,
that's ethics. And so yeah. Oh gosh, I can't resist, man.
Okay,
here's a comment by Tufile from earlier. I'd already pointed out that wow, you can sit here making these claims and not realizing how ignorant your claim is. Tufile says there's a big difference between the Torah of the Quran and the Torah of the Bible.
Tell them how you really feel, D-Dub.
Okay.
Tell them how you feel.
Let's go through this. Tufile. According to Surah 3, verses 3 to 4 of your Quran, according to Surah 3, verses 3 to 4 of your Quran, Allah inspired the Torah and the Injil, the Torah and the Gospel. He gave them, right? According to Surah 7, verse 157 of your Quran, Christians and Jews were still reading the Torah and the Gospel during the time of Muhammad. So they're still reading them. So we know that according to your Quran, they were still preserved and still in the possession of Jews and Christians during the 7th century. Guess what? We have copies of the Torah and the Gospel before the 7th century, so we know what they're talking about, right? If you're saying that the Torah has been corrupted, oopsie, the Quran says that no one can change Allah's words. Surah 18, verse 27, Surah 6, verse 115, no one can change Allah's words. And I'll remind you, Surah 3, verses 3 to 4, declare that the Torah and the Gospel are Allah's words. If you go to Surah 5, verse 43, we already mentioned Surah 5, verse 47, which commands Christians to judge by the Gospel, which makes no sense if the Christians don't have the Gospel anymore because they've corrupted it. But if we go back to a few verses earlier, Surah 5, verse 43, interesting situation. Some Jews come to Muhammad to judge a dispute they were having, and Allah responds to Jews coming to Muhammad by saying, why do they come to you when they have the Torah? Notice, you're saying that the Torah is different from the Torah that the Quran refers to. The Quran says that the Jews have the Torah in the 7th century. We know what the Torah was in the 7th century. We have copies before that. So your God says, Muhammad, they do not need you. They've got the Torah. We know what the Torah was in the 7th century. You're saying they're different. So you're saying what? You're saying Allah is ignorant. And you know that they're not the same thing. Allah says they're the same thing. So you're telling us that Allah is ignorant. And we shouldn't trust what he says because he doesn't know what he's talking about. Gets worse, though. Muhammad, during this same situation, we know from the hadith, we know the historical background. When the Jews came to Muhammad to judge this dispute, he gets this revelation and he tells them, bring me the Torah. And Muhammad sits on this judgment cushion. The judge would sit on this special cushion in Arabia. So he sits on the judgment cushion. He tells the Jews, bring me the Torah. When they bring him the Torah, Muhammad takes the cushion out from under him, puts the Torah on it and says, I believe in you and in the one who revealed you. So according to your prophet and your God, the Torah that is in the possession of Jews to this day, because they have the same Torah that they had in the 7th century and that they had well before this, centuries before them, your God and your prophet say that Torah, the Torah that is in the possession of the Jews, is the same Torah that was revealed to them, and that they have to judge by that, and they do not need Muhammad because they still have the original Torah. You just called Allah the biggest liar in history, and you called your prophet the biggest liar in history. So there goes your religion, Tufile. You're no longer, notice, as we mentioned earlier, Surah 4, verse 65 of the Quran says that if you have the slightest resistance to anything Muhammad has claimed,
tell him, Wood.
You're not a real Muslim.
Preach.
You're not a real Muslim. Not according to me, but according to the great God Allah. If you have any resistance to anything Muhammad has said, you are not a real Muslim. Muhammad said, I affirm that Quran. And you have said, no, I do not affirm that Quran. And this means what?
Like a hill.
It means your religion is a false religion, according to you, and you are not a real Muslim, according to you. So you're going to need forgiveness. Sorry, but you're not going to find it in your religion. So I encourage you to actually do some study beyond cutting and pasting stuff off some horrible website and actually do some reading here. All right.
Real quick though, Nona Bubble had a comment that you might want to comment on.
Who?
Nona Bubble. This comment's really gonna pop. Says that was bad.
John never did this until he's hanging out with Mike. So Mike has completely corrupted and ruined John forever.
It says Jesus only appeared to be dead. That's God's magic. Smiley face. And Allah is all loving. He does love us. He knows better than us, all the guides. And then goes on to argue how God deceived, or Allah deceived everybody by making them think that Jesus was really on the cross. What are the implications of that view, David Wood?
Well, Mike, you've debated Muslims as well. So, what are the implications of which view? The ones that the survival one or the non-survival one?
No,
the deceiver verse was revealed when Allah deceived the enemies by deceiving the enemies by tricking that Jesus died, but He only made him look as if he died. Deceived has a positive and negative connotation. So, just so everyone knows, Allah is the greatest of deceivers in the Quran. And Allah tricked and deceived, according to this, Allah tricked and deceived the enemies of Jesus into believing that He died on the cross. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, one thing you pointed out to me a long time ago is that not only does that require that Allah would have deceived the enemies, which we could understand that, but He also deceived the disciples of Jesus, whom you point out that the Quran refers to as Muslims. Okay, so again, you can understand why He would deceive the enemies, but why would you deceive the followers of Jesus and have them start and perpetrate the largest religion in the world and greatest competitor to Islam? That wouldn't seem to be very smart of Allah. I remember you pointing out that to me years ago. Something I've noticed, though, as I've studied things historically about Jesus, is we can conclude that Jesus actually predicted His imminent death. So, I mean, there's a number of reasons I could give for you to believe that, to think that Jesus predicted His death. So if Jesus did not die as He predicted, well, that makes Him a false prophet. And the Quran says He is a great prophet. So that would mean the Quran is mistaken because Jesus was a false prophet. But if Jesus died as He predicted, well, the Quran is still wrong because it says God only made it appear that Jesus died, but He really didn't. So if Jesus actually died, then the Quran is false on that sense. Either way, the Quran is wrong. So you're caught between this proverbial rock and a hard place, and the only way out of it is to say, well, Jesus didn't actually teach that He would die an imminent death. But I could give you several reasons to think that He did, and you would have to overcome all of this. So we've got really good reasons to think that Jesus predicted His death. We've got no good reasons to think that He did not, or that He did not die, because all the historical evidence, even Shabir Ali, if you remember that first debate I had with him, you were there. Shabir Ali acknowledged that all the evidence points to Jesus' death by crucifixion. It's not only in the Christian sources, it's in non-Christian sources. And so we have all these reasons to believe Jesus died by crucifixion. And the only thing to think that He didn't is a book that mentions this and claims that He didn't, that was written 600 years after Jesus, contradicts those who knew Jesus, contradicts the eyewitnesses, contradicts all the evidence we have. So you can believe what you want, but you're only using theological reasons. I'm going to use historical reasons.
And apparently, I was wondering if someone was bringing it up to get us to respond to it, or if someone is actually a Muslim. But Nona Bubble says it's not a false religion, and I already have a Christian online friend who is trying to convince me to leave Islam and be a Christian. He actually suggested this channel and a few others. Yeah, I'd like to add to what Mike just said there. So he pointed out Jesus predicted His own death. So Jesus predicted that He was going to die. I want to add, as we've already discussed, your Quran, you can read it, chapter 5, verse 47, a bunch of other passages, 157, 568, says to Christians and Jews, we have no ground to stand upon if we do not stand upon the Torah and the gospel. That makes no sense if our scriptures have been corrupted. So we know that the Quran is affirming the scriptures in the possession of Jews and Christians during the 7th century, and we know what those scriptures said. We know what those scriptures said.
Yeah,
so
Jesus' death is a major theme throughout all of them.
Yeah. And so your Quran affirms our book and tells us, commands us to judge by our book. We are commanded by your God in the Quran to judge by what we read in the gospel. And Allah specifically says that if we don't judge by what he revealed in the gospel, then we're no better than those who rebel. So we're rebels if we don't judge by the gospel. What does the gospel say? Jesus died by crucifixion over and over and over again, like a beating drum. So one, there's no way out of this, right? Jesus predicted his death. Jesus predicted that he was going to be killed on the cross. If he didn't, then he's a false prophet, and so he can't be a true Muslim. He's a false prophet. But if he did, then the Quran is wrong. So either way, your religion loses. Second, we have the Quran affirming our scriptures. Our scriptures say that Jesus died by crucifixion. So there are two possibilities here. Either we trust our scriptures and judge by them, or we don't. If we trust and judge by our scriptures, then Islam is false because our scriptures affirm that Jesus died by crucifixion. If we don't trust and judge by our scriptures, then Islam is false because Islam affirms our scriptures and tells us to judge by them. So either way, you lose again. Now, your way of getting around the theological objection, which, by the way, just think about this, right? People see Jesus crucified. It was a public event. It was a public crucifixion. The Muslim response is, no, no, no. Allah deceived people because he's the best of deceivers. He's the best of those who do it. Allah tricked and deceived people by disguising someone else to make him look like someone. And the most common thing that Muslims say today is Judas, right? So they'll say someone else was crucified in Jesus' place. And this is what Allah did. Now, your way of reconciling this with your belief in Allah is to say, but he only tricked the enemies. That's wrong, right? It's the disciples, right? It's the disciples. Again, It's the disciples who came to believe. Jesus' original followers came to believe that he died on the cross. Where did they get that idea? Well, we happen to know, according to Islam, that Allah tricked and deceived people into believing that he died. He made it a public event, right? In other words, are you claiming that Jesus' enemies saw him being crucified, but no one else saw it? Is that your claim? It's a public crucifixion. It's a public event. But think about this. One, why would God deceive people about that? Why would he make them think they had victory when they didn't? So this is an even if, but in fact, even if Allah only deceived the enemies of Jesus, why would he do it? I can understand God, tricking someone for something, right? Like if I'm about to walk out of here and there's a gang of people and they want to murder me, and God tricks them into thinking I went one way when I went a different way, I don't have any particular problem with that. But there I would understand why it's being done. What's the purpose of Allah making people think that Jesus died when he didn't? Right? You can't say it's to protect Jesus. Jesus was taken safely to heaven. So what was the point? What was the point of it? Right? So that's one problem. Even if you were right, that still doesn't make any sense. But second, the but in fact part, everyone came to believe that Jesus died by crucifixion, right? Jesus' followers, the Jews, the Romans, everyone believed that Jesus died by crucifixion. Why? Because it was a public event. And so, and again, as Mike pointed out, even Muslims will acknowledge, yes, all the evidence we have tells us that Jesus died, but he didn't, because we know Allah was just tricking and deceiving everyone. So keep in mind, it was Jesus' own followers who, according to the Quran, were devout Muslims. The Quran says that Jesus' followers were Muslims. We know historically that those followers went to their horrible, bloody deaths proclaiming that Jesus is Lord. Why did they do that? Because they believed he'd risen from the dead. Why did they believe that? Because the crucifixion was a public event. Everyone knew he was crucified. And then he's alive again later and appearing to them. So when Muslims want to say, Christianity was corrupted by someone like the Apostle Paul, don't blame Paul. Blame Allah. Yeah. Your God Allah is the one who corrupted Christianity, right? And just think about how absurd this is. Allah gives Jesus all these miracles. You got the virgin birth. Jesus is raising the dead according to Islam. He's cleansing lepers. He's the Messiah. He does all of these miracles. And then as soon as Allah takes Jesus away, he convinces everyone that Jesus died on the cross for no reason. And then even Jesus' followers come to believe that he died on the cross for their sins. Why did your God ruin everything Jesus did, right? So that now, by the end, you had basically two categories of people. There were people who rejected Jesus, regarded him as a false Messiah. According to Islam, they're going to hell for rejecting Jesus. And there were people who were bowing down and worshiping him as the risen Lord. Why did they believe he's the risen Lord? Because they believed he died and then rose from the dead. So what does Allah do? He completely destroys everything Jesus does, and then he has to clean up the mess, 6 centuries later when Muhammad comes along. Is that the God you believe in? A guy who just corrupts the work of his own prophet? Jesus, that's his prophet, right? He corrupts the message and teachings of his own prophet, leads even devout Muslims astray, because keep in mind, your book says that Jesus' followers were devout Muslims. We know that they went to their bloody deaths proclaiming that he's the risen Lord. Why? According to your religion, it's because Allah led them astray.
And still is deceiving, because he says to trust the Injil, right?
Mm-hmm. And then backs it up by saying, hey guys, if you're thinking, hey, we don't want to judge by that, you better judge by it or you're a rebel. You have no ground to stand upon unless you stand upon those texts that affirm Jesus' death by crucifixion. So just over and over and over, and then you better believe in what Jesus said. You better believe in the gospel, and you better believe in what Jesus said. Well, Jesus said he's going to die by crucifixion. There's no way to reconcile this. So there are basically 2 possibilities here. Either we have the word of God or we don't have the word of God. If we have the word of God, Islam is false. If we don't have the word of God, Islam is false. Either way, Islam is false. Your religion massively self-destructs. That's just what happens when you affirm the texts and teachings of a religion that completely contradict your own religion. So, time for a new religion. Time for a new religion known above all. All right, we done here?
Yeah, I think we're about done, ladies and gentlemen. It's been nice kicking it with everybody. It's 615 people watching, 620 people watching. For you 4 people that just tuned in just now, you're late.
You're late. You could go back and watch it, though. All right.
It's been good joining you guys. Being with you last night and tonight, this has been fun.
Yeah, man. Yeah, always good. Make sure you guys check out Mike Licona's book, The Resurrection of Jesus. Also, your book, Are There Contradictions in the Gospels?
And check out my YouTube channel.
Yep, and his YouTube channel.
Just Mike Licona, Licona.
Mike Licona. Eddie, I got it. Thanks, man. I'll take a look.
I can't help myself. Where did it go? I saw a comment from Nona here.
Oh, yeah, she said she still watched your video. That one?
Yeah, I was looking for that comment.
Yes, I watched you explain that in your other videos. The Quran says to rely on Bible, etc. I mean to Allah trick to save Jesus?
Hang on, let's read this. Yes, I watched you explain that in your other videos. The Quran says to rely on Bible, etc. That's true. You're correct on that. I mean to Allah tricked to save Jesus, but judging doesn't mean believing from others. So when the Quran orders us to judge by the gospel, it's not telling us to believe in that. Why would we judge by the gospel?
Yeah, what does that mean then?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if the Quran says that we have to judge by the gospel, we have to believe that it's the word of God, which your book says. Your book says that it's the word of God. Your book affirms the inspiration and the preservation and the authority of the Torah and the gospel. Surah 7, 157 said that Christians and Jews were still reading the gospel and the Torah during the time of Muhammad. We know what that gospel says. We know what that gospel says. And besides, you're going with the judging. Again, Surah 5, verse 68 of the Quran says that Jews and Christians have no ground to stand upon if we do not stand upon the revelation that has come to us, the Torah and the gospel. So if that's not telling us to believe in it, if Allah is saying that he revealed it and that no one can change his words and that Christians still had the Torah and the gospel during the time of Muhammad and commanding us to judge by it and saying that we have no ground to stand upon if we don't stand upon it, if that's not saying believe in it, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Allah is clearly telling us that is our revelation. And just so you know, Nona, and you can come back if you want to talk about this more. We have to get off here. But if you want to really understand the position of the Quran with the other scriptures, check out my video. Check out my video. I have a video titled something along the lines of, trying to think, why the Quran was revealed in Arabic. So look up my video. If you want to look up that real quick and share that. But the video is titled, Why the Quran Was Revealed in Arabic. Muslims today, you can go to your Muslim apologists. They will tell you what? They will say, Allah gave them the Torah, but they corrupted that. Allah gave them the gospel, but they corrupted that. So then Allah, he decided, no more, I'm going to give them a new book, a Quran, and I'm going to protect it. That's what your Muslim apologists would tell you. That is absolute ridiculous nonsense, not according to me, according to your own book. If you read the Quran, and again, video is why the Quran is revealed in Arabic. The message of the Quran is that Allah sent prophets into all parts of the world. Allah sent prophets into all parts of the world. And these prophets revealed scriptures in different parts of the world. The Arabs were the last people to receive a revelation from God. And according to the Quran, if the Arabs were the only people who didn't receive a revelation from God, they would be able to stand before Allah on the judgment day and say, we didn't get a revelation in our own language. Everyone else got a revelation in their own language. We didn't get a revelation in our own language. So in order to stop that objection, Allah gives them the Quran in Arabic. And the message of the Quran from then on is everyone then has their book. Jews have their book in their language. Christians have their book in their language. And now the Arabs have the book in their language. That's the message of the Quran. So notice that is very, very different. And that's why the Quran is affirming all of these other scriptures. These are the other scriptures for other people in different languages. According to the Quran, people need a book in their own language. Otherwise, they have to rely on other people to tell them what's in the book, or they have to spend a massive part of their life going out and learning other languages. The Quran says, no, I can't expect the Arabs to go and learn Hebrew to understand the Torah. I can't expect them to learn Greek to understand the New Testament. I can't expect them to do that. People need a revelation in their own language. What do Muslims tell us today? We all have to read the Quran in Arabic, even though that's not our language. What Muslims say completely contradicts your own book. Why? Because the Quran is completely incoherent. It just can't make sense of any of this, right? The Quran affirms these other scriptures as the incorruptible word of God. But eventually Muslims went and looked at those texts and realized these completely contradict Islam. However, they couldn't draw the obvious conclusion. The obvious conclusion was Muhammad and Allah didn't know what they were talking about. We can't trust them. False prophet, false God. We need a new religion.
So what did they say?
By the time they recognized this, they would have gotten their heads chopped off for saying this. You couldn't go on and say, hey, I think Muhammad's wrong. They would chop your head off. So they had to say, I guess those other scriptures have been corrupted. What about Allah saying that? We're just going to ignore that. We're just going to ignore that century after century after century and hoping people like Nona Bubble don't recognize it. Well, Nona Bubble, you're here. Now you have to recognize it. So check out that video and come back on a later live stream and we'll be happy to discuss this more.
And I posted the video a couple times, so I just posted it one more time so you guys can go click on it and go watch that video right meow because we're about to here.
And shout out to Cad for the super chat.
Yep.
And Josu Neves. I know there were other super chats where we're scrolling through the comments that we didn't get to. Sorry about that. But thanks for everyone for super chats and super stickers and people became channel members. Thanks to John and Mike for joining us while we're down here, even though we're worn out and got an early flight. The links to John's channel and Mike's channel are in the description box. So if you're interested in John, tell them what you normally deal with again. Where people came late?
So I usually just respond to anti-Christian memes, videos, and breezy slogans, and also give cultural commentary and talk about how the gospel ties in with whatever's going on in culture. That's what I do.
And so if you're interested in that sort of thing, got his channel. Mike, what do you cover on your channel again?
Well, I've got a lot of my debates. I've had 33 public debates, and a lot of them, most of them, are on my YouTube channel. I've debated Muslims, I've debated agnostics and atheists, I have a number of my lectures. I deal with things such as the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, the historical reliability of the Gospels, why there are differences in the Gospels, all these kinds of things, and other topics as well. Who did Jesus think he was? Did he think he was God? Things like that. We have some other things on there. We've got a series that's coming out here pretty soon called A Fly on the Wall. So I hang around with some pretty cool people. At times we have some...
Obviously.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And we have some great discussions. So I find people saying to me, boy, I wish I could be a fly on the wall when you're having these discussions. And so you're going to be able to.
Yeah. So, and by that, I mean, lots of people always say that. I would have loved to have heard the discussions between you guys and the BO and stuff back in the day. And so you're actually doing it, saying, hey, let's record stuff. And then we have those discussions.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yep. Fresh. All right.
All right, guys, we are officially out of time. I'm going to go pack. See you all later. I'll probably be going live with the Apostate Prophet in a couple days. I haven't verified with him, but we got some cool announcement coming out tomorrow. And so See you all then. Catch you later.
All right, everyone.